Welcome to Business Over a Brew. Pleased to be joined in this episode by Tom Declue from GRP Wegman. Tom, thanks for coming on the show. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Appreciate it.
So let's just start with just give us a little bit of history of GRP Wegman, how did it get started, and who were the founders. And
Yeah, so my grandpa was a hardworking, eighth grade educated farm boy, grew the company to about 6 people. Started shooting. It was all started with HVAC services where it was at. And then dad, mechanical engineer from Rolla. He kind of grew us to the physical size that we are today, established us there in Bethalto and grew the company quite a bit. Took us into new areas mechanically, took us into industrial plants. And we grew up to probably 10, 12, 15 million with dad. And then somewhere between 2006, 2009, we're not exactly sure when he retired. He retired, and now we've hit years where we were up to 150 million, but we're running right around 100 million right now.
So you're a Bethalto guy. Did you just always know that's what you were going to do, or were there other plans in the works somewhere? Or?
No, with family business, we really don't do at least our family in particular, we didn't really do anything else other than work. We love working.
Right.
There's so many things that we're just obtuse to. We have no clue about. It's work. So, I knew that. I started out in the field as a welder, pipe fitter welder, and so did that for 12 years, and then did 18 years of night school for my business degree. Most people thought I got a master's or a doctorate. No, I just got my bachelor's. I did it in night school, so it took a long time.
Took a while, right?
But
yeah.
So
I think there's great benefit though when you're now in the position you're in. The fact that you've done the work before, probably there's a nice benefit to that, and being able to relate to your employees.
Yeah, I think it helps a lot. The situations where someone says something, you get it instantly, and you can't. I think a lot of times people are judged on things that could hurt them if the boss hasn't went through that and experienced that really tough time, and it does help. Not that I got it all figured out, because I don't, but it helps.
You seem like you guys have had a pretty aggressive approach to growth, especially since you took it over. Talk about that philosophy and I guess kind of the entrepreneurial spirit of the business.
Yeah, I'd say a lot of that probably, Nick, goes back to my faith. I didn't honestly plan on talking about this, but when you ask it, I'm gonna say it. I felt called to create wealth for the kingdom, to grow the kingdom. So it wasn't a matter of stuffing a bunch of money in my pocket or my coworkers' pockets. I want to create wealth so that when people like where I go now, New Hope Church, when they need something, they need help, I can kind of be there to help them. And that's, I kind of feel called to that. And so when situations arise, I pray about them. In fact, when the Wegman acquisition and when we tied together with Wegman, I was out jogging in my subdivision, had my earbuds in, listening to worship music, and just out of nowhere, and some of the viewers might think I'm crazy, but I'm going to say it. Just out of nowhere, I felt kind of led to, have you ever considered buying Wegman Electric? And so I know that's odd because I wasn't thinking that at all. I didn't, from a strategic standpoint, no other mechanicals have really linked up with electricals in this area.
Right.
And there was a lot of difficulties with it. I won't, just didn't feel right. But then I thought about it a little bit more, got into the strategy a little bit more. Still, when I'm in my subdivision, I quit running. I started walking, thinking, oh my gosh, what is this? And I ended up sending a text message to Mr. Booz. He was the leader of Wegman Electric. And I said, hey, Terry, you might think I'm crazy, but would you ever consider? And he said, come over to my office on Monday. And a year later, to that day, we closed on the sale of Wegman.
So it wasn't even for sale, to your knowledge?
No, it wasn't. I shot him a text message, and he told me, get to my office on Monday, and we started talking. So
I'm sure when that you got that text back, I'm sure that made you think, okay, this is for real. This is meant to be.
Yeah.
I'm in the same position sometimes, and it's like I'll get those thoughts, and sometimes I don't. I ignore them, but man, when they come back a second and third time, it's like, okay, somebody is.
That's right.
Is in my ear here. So,
yeah, it's good.
And it's funny how you just you just kind of have a feeling about deals like that, don't you?
Yes, sir.
Um,
Absolutely.
so tell us about the merging of those two companies and some of the challenges that you faced in terms of just, and it's something we've gone through with Big Z Media,
Mm-hmm.
obviously bringing together the Advantage and the radio
Mm-hmm.
station. I mean, there's some things you don't think about, and
No.
maybe you'd go back and do a little bit differently. What are some of those things?
Yeah,
Maybe.
there's, on the outside, when you look at someone and you think there's a perfect culture blend, just maybe even with marriages,
Right.
you start dating someone, you think everything's perfect and this is going to work, but then when you start living in the same household,
Right.
things are a little bit different. And in today's world with business, it's tough even when everything's perfect and everything works right. So the Wegman people and the tie-in with them, and then Wegman owned Lowry Electric as well, so we now own Lowry. It has been excellent. There's been great people there. The biggest change that really had anything to do with Wegman and GRP was when we ended up leaving the refinery. That was about 80% of Wegman's revenue, and it was 50% of GRP's revenue. So we went from doing about 150 million down to about 90 when we left there, and that was it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't more. I mean, the two companies blended really, really well. I'll say, not that it was perfect, but
Right.
we blended well. It was more of the departure of the refinery is what caused most of the issues.
Sure. I mean, perfection's never going to be achieved. Probably,
Right.
it's striving for it. I get one concern I had, and this was just a thought in the back of my mind. I think I read Jim Collins, maybe it was Good to Great or one of his books. He said combining two good companies together does not make one great
Yeah.
company. And you like to think you're great, but in the back of your mind, like maybe we're just two good
Yeah.
ones, and is this going to go the wrong direction? But I think one of the things you touched on was key is just it's really the people and the culture, and if those two things work, I think you can kind of figure the rest of it out.
Absolutely. Culture and people, 100% everything.
Yeah.
It's not the name. It's not even what you do. I think if the people are right, mindset's right, you can sell snow cones in Alaska and make money at it if you got the right people.
Right. Talk about some ways that you guys go about building that culture at GRP Wegman.
Oh, good question. One, we try and if you don't fit well, honestly, I'll just say we try and, hey, would you please leave and go find a different job somewhere else,
We're going to free up your weekdays for you.
which is rough.
Right.
I
Yeah.
hope. Yeah, that's a little bit rough, but that's what we do. We try and do fun events on occasion. Right around April 1st, we do something goofy in the office, or we've done.
That's like tomorrow.
It's coming up. So it's in 2 weeks from now where we'll do putt in the office, or we'll do something just hang out and have a good time.
Right.
I just feel, and I will say most of the people in the company, at least at the management level, feel like if people enjoy coming to work, and that's a big ask. But if you at least can get to that point where you strive for it and you try and bring people on board that are pushing for that,
Mm-hmm.
and you empower people to the point to where, all right, this is my part, this is my thing. You don't have a micromanager looking over the shoulder. This is mine, and I'm a part of this, and I kind of enjoy. You get much more out of people. The difficult times are easier to manage. Productivity's up, safety's up, everything's up if people enjoy coming to work. But it's tough.
Two things I want to touch on that you mentioned. Hopefully, I'll be able to remember them both. One is I find with business owners versus employees, the wiring's just a little bit differently. And you mentioned, liking to go to work. Most business owners that I talk to would go almost for free.
Yeah.
They're at the office all the time, and even if they weren't necessarily getting a paycheck, this would still be their mission in life to do this. But I've been on the other side of the road too, where I'm an employee, and it's like, yeah, I don't want to be there Monday through Friday. I'm here
Yeah.
mostly because, I have to be there. I need
Yeah.
a paycheck. So I think trying to bridge that divide is a challenge, certainly, because sometimes you feel almost hurt, like, God, you don't want to be here? I love being here.
Yeah.
Whereas the employees is like, no, I'd rather be, actually, if you gave me my choice, I'd be fishing or with my family or
Yeah,
whatever.
that's right.
So it's a
Very
little
true.
bit different. And then the second thing was just that you mentioned having to dismiss employees, and man, I've never met anybody that likes to do that. But so talk about some of the decisions that go into that. And I always think of it as, yeah, you don't want to do that. It's bad for that person, but there's an entire company to think about, really, that you're making those decisions based on, not just one person.
Yeah. So Nick, you're asking me all
There
the
might
hard
have been a
questions.
question in there somewhere. I don't
Yeah.
know.
No, there is. Yeah. I should have asked for, hey, can you get me a pre-scripted list of what you're asking me the tough stuff, Nick?
Or
That's
we
good.
should have even asked,
Yeah.
like, hey, where do we do this?
Yeah. Yeah. Good point. Good point. Yeah, I think, if your main agenda on a daily basis is to go in and manage the culture and ensure that people are happy and productive and safe, and you work at creating friendships and bonds with people, and that's what you do, and then that translates into bottom line profit, if that's your MO, it's how do you tie that into, hey, we just lost $70 million of revenue by losing that one single account, and now we've got to make changes.
Right. Yeah.
And so the two things are diametrically opposed. They don't go together. The main, what we ended up doing with every person in our company, we basically asked them, hey, because we loved them, but we said, hey, we would ask you to go find another job. So it was tough, because a lot
Sure.
of good friends, we basically asked to walk out the door and go find something else, because we weren't going to be in that line of business. I think people that are a whole lot better at business than we are would have probably smacked us in the back of the head and said, you did it too slow and you did it wrong and you could have saved a lot. But
Yeah.
we make lots of mistakes. We just did our best.
One thing that always occurs to me, if you do get into that unfortunate situation, is I really hate thinking that somebody was surprised by it. I guess that
Yeah.
there wasn't some kind of
Yeah.
forewarning,
Yeah.
or that, hey, this is. And I think that only happens when you're just not being transparent as
Yeah.
the business, because
Yeah.
most of the people you probably let go had probably some inkling that was the direction it was going to go.
Yeah. There was quite a few that said, I'm surprised you didn't do it sooner. And
Right.
then-
Yeah.
And then the rest of the team members there, as far as us going forward, everybody that remains, we have just we've been on fire with landing more work and grabbing more work. And we've basically exploded in the last 4 months with work, because, people recognize that we've righted the ship. We've kind of got overhead in alignment with the total amount of revenue, and we've been landing a ton of work. So it's been good.
Talk about, I know that there's that side of the coin. Landing a lot of work leads to some opportunities with the company, and I know you and I have talked a lot recently about some employment opportunities with GRP Wegman. Talk a little bit about some of those and what that might entail.
Yeah. So when COVID hit, we all kind of went back to the house, and for a while, our safety department said, hey, I want to, everybody needs to go back and not come to the office. So we got bored and we started crunching a bunch of numbers. I had, I don't know how many lines, it was 4 years of data, 40,000 lines in an Excel spreadsheet. And we started, I was looking for what the perfect job was. So is it a plumbing job in Edwardsville with this guy running it with a duration this long with this much revenue, or what? And I couldn't find correlation in any of the numbers. I was looking for what's perfect. Mm-hmm. But what we did end up finding was there's a lot of I'm getting nerdy on you, Nick. There's we could see the divisions that had their return at the end of the year. We had 9 different departments of the company, and some of the departments if you looked at one standard deviation off of their norm return year after year, a lot of times they were dipping into the negative. And we all kind of sat back as a management team and said, look at some of these. We've got a lot of our great friends that work in these areas. I mean, we've done this for a really, really long time, but on average, you can statistically prove that we're going to pay money to do these divisions. We're
Right.
going to pay money to do this work. And so what we decided to do, and it took us a couple of years to make these decisions, let's not do it anymore. Mm-hmm. And that's why we changed. We ended up shutting pretty much 5 departments of the 9 down in the company. And I say all that to say, when you look at the areas that we're growing right now, they are service, in particular, clients such as this place. There are, they need someone to come fix their equipment quickly.
Right.
And so we're wired that way to show up, be a servant to that client, take care of whatever they need, and get back out the door and kind of cut the cost off. So we're going after those types of clients, and we're going after HVAC service people right now. So we're looking for anybody that has the ability to work on a 30-ton rooftop and up.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not getting paid enough, if you're not making a pretty good chunk of money, give us a call. We'll take care of you. We'll respect you. We'll give you tools. We'll pay you overtime. We'll pay you double time on Sundays. You can get up to $40 an hour on the check if you know how to work on a 30-ton rooftop and up. And then we'll put about $15 an hour into a 401k plan and free health insurance, in essence, for life.
Yeah.
So a lot of great perks if you know how to work on commercial HVAC equipment.
And certainly no harm in at least talking to you.
Right,
right. And hopefully it'll be a fit. So.
Yeah, and we really appreciate WBGZ pushing this for us as well. So this is great.
Happy to help out. What are some of you mentioned the faith part of it. I know that's an important part for you. And then at the same time, seems pretty data driven too. What are some of the keys for success for you that you look at and say, I got to have these things to make this work?
Culture is number one. So we've had people in the past that were phenomenal, have a great bottom line, but they didn't fit with this culturally, so we asked them to step out. If a person culturally ties into us and we can hit break even with that person, we'll give it a go and give it a shot and see what we can do. So culture is number one. Obviously we don't want to do anything that costs us money because that hurts the other people that are working really hard in the company.
Sure.
But that's a quick synopsis of it.
Yeah. What are some of the biggest maybe surprises or challenges that you faced in the last 5 years?
The removal, we centered the company around P66 and that maintenance department. We were up to 260 people there on site.
Right.
And they basically said, you may have to edit this out, but it was a 5-year contract. Will you bid it? We bid it, basically doing $70 million a year in revenue there. We bid it to make $900,000 after $70 million. There's going to be a lot of people who are freaking out about that. But you do $70 million in revenue to only make $900,000.
That's not a great margin.
It's not a
really.
great margin because there's a lot of risk in it.
Sure.
A lot of problems with it, a lot of effort. And so they said, you're way too high. By the time we got to the number that made them happy, our first year we were going to lose $2.1 million. But what we said was we had a plan to where we could get back to break even in 3.5 years on this 5-year contract. And then the last year and a half, we figured we could make money. And what we also said was if we went through that whole entire effort, that we would be better, stronger, smarter, and how to save money in other areas. So we thought it would improve us in the other half of the company. So we put the bid in, again, to lose $2.1 million the first year. And that's not like we thought we'd make $10 million, but we're only going to make 7.9. No, it was, we were paying $2.1 million to be in there for them.
Right.
And so they said, oh, you guys are really close. And then they said, GRP people, you can stay, but the Wegman people, they're out. And I said, if you don't, we'll change anything you don't want, but if you don't want the Wegman people, then the GRP people are going to leave too. And I thought we were good enough that they'd say, okay, you stay, but they said, okay, you guys leave too. And that's why we all left.
That's interesting because it's such a big deal that you're trying to work on. Probably the one that's keeping you up, morning, noon, and night.
Yeah.
So once.
Great point, Nick. Yeah,
thanks for reminding me that I lost a lot of sleep over that. But once you get past it, what did you learn from that experience?
Well, so really cool things. So, and again, I'll go back to my faith. So they brought us in, and it took them about 12 minutes to tell us you're out. Went back to the office. And that night, I drove out there and I parked. It was 5:30 at night, and I parked in the parking lot and I prayed. And I just said, hey, Lord, I know that all things work for the good of those who love him, and I do love him. So I don't quite understand this as a man, but I know it'll work. And I was crying in the parking lot because there was a lot of people that we were trying to figure out what to do with. But after that, and that was in September of 19. September 19. So we basically, by November, we laid off 260 people when we lost that account. In March of 20, we all have COVID. Then in April, the PPP plan comes around, and it basically says, hey, what were your pre-employment numbers prior to COVID?
Right.
We passed all the tests. Well, we lost 260 people, and basically the federal government ended up handing us a $14 million PPP check, which allowed me to redesign the company in a completely new way. So I sat out there saying, Lord, I don't know what you're doing, but I trust in you. I have faith in you. And then 4 months later, and it took 3 times, and our accounting department did an amazing job even getting that 14 in. It was 3 different payments, but by a year later after that, we received a lot of money because of it.
I know there's a perfect reason why, but I don't know why. In my mind, can't wrap itself around why God just doesn't give us the entire plan at once and let us know what's about to happen.
I think we gain more perspective
You're
when we
right,
go
yeah.
through it.
Yeah.
I remember Todd Locks when he came back from the Marines, and we were all down in his basement, and he's down there folding clothes. Okay, so we're
Right.
19 years old or whatever, and he just went through boot camp, and he looks up at us and he says, I am so happy just to be folding clothes right now. And I think the question that you asked is all a matter of perspective.
Yeah.
His perspective was completely different because he just went through boot camp with
Right.
the Marines, and now he was happy to be folding clothes. And so I think if we were robbed of the opportunity of not going through crap at times,
Right.
we might not have the same perspective.
Great way to put it. These are usually just kind of a therapy session for me, so I appreciate you coming on to help me out with that. Last question: tell us a little bit about your orange chicken recipe.
Oh, you want just
I
the
did a little research before the interview, believe it or not.
you had probably an extra 25 minutes before this whole thing started.
Which was my fault.
Yeah, so a good friend of mine, David Beauchard, started a Paper Planes ministry, and that ministry goes into the projects of Alton, picks up a bunch of kids and takes them to a church in Upper Alton. And one night, the very first night that I show up at this event, I'm the old white guy, and my skin color is different than everybody there. And I walk up to one kid just wanting to relate, and I know I'm way older than everybody, but I just wanted to relate to one person, and he was sitting by himself. And I said, "Hey, what's up?" And he didn't even want to look at me. He didn't want to talk to me.
Right.
And I asked him. I ended up asking him, "Hey, you into cars?" And he says, "Yeah, I'm into cars." And he turned to me and he squared with me. So then I ended up asking him, "Well, what's your favorite car?" And he said, "It's this." And I was like, and then, "Well, what's your favorite color?" And he went through what his favorite car, make, model, color was, and it happened to be the exact car that I have. And I said, "Hey, you're going to think this is weird, but I have that exact car."
Wow.
So Gregory and I hit it off really well that night. 15-year-old kid from the projects, old white guy, and we're just talking. And then so I asked him what his superpower was, what he was really good at. He was good at basketball, knows a lot about cars, and we're talking and we're going through all this stuff, and I'm really linking up to him. And then I asked him, what are you bad at? Got a good friend by the name of John Elliott that taught me that when you ask those types of questions and you ask something like that, when a person can be vulnerable, you'll actually make a deeper, quicker connection with someone. So I thought, oh, okay, I'll try it. So I did it. Well, he looked at me like I was an idiot, and he jumped off the post and he walked away. And I was like, what did I just do? And what I recognized was there are so many of those boys that go through hell on a daily basis that they're not affirmed, in my opinion, in the proper way. And when I asked him that question, had such a kind of a negative feel to it. They didn't even want to stand there and talk to me.
Right.
So for the next 3 months after that, I kind of analyzed behavior, and I was looking for a way to potentially pour leadership and affirmation to these young men from the projects. So I don't know anything about food, but I ended up, we bought a big bus. We're going to turn it into a food truck. I'm so happy you asked these questions. Thank you, Nick. I didn't like the bad questions, but I like these
good.
these
Okay,
good
good,
questions.
yeah. I try.
So
Try to mix it up.
we're gonna create a food truck. We got a 40-foot transit bus that runs around through downtown St. Louis. We're gonna make and we're gonna serve just orange chicken. And it's gonna be about, we're gonna talk about God and faith, and we're gonna talk about leadership and leadership principles and the right way to kind of interact, how to be on time for meetings, how to do all these great leadership things. And then we're going to cook some chicken on the side, orange chicken on the side, and sell it and see. And then the goal is, and don't tell anybody this, but the goal is,
Nobody watches.
now that if any of those young men step up and they show interest in really getting involved in that, we will take, and I'm going to take that bus and I'm going to give it to them. It's your business. And then I'm going to go do another one get another thing, and they'll have their own huge food truck.
You need to come back and come back on the show and tell us how that goes, because that
Yes,
is
sir.
an awesome project. Tom, thanks for coming on the show. I
Thank you
appreciate
so
it.
much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.